Hello there, this is Roberto Matthews. I have another tutorial for you, and this tutorial is going to be in three major parts. I'm going to have the HTML part, the CSS, and the jQuery. And so in the description, I'm going to do my best to put the timestamps so that you can skip to the part you want. But if you'd like to go all the way through, we're going to talk about how to create this gallery that I have here. And the gallery here, as you can see, it kind of goes from being kind of like out of focus to focus, and then it also basically, it's a pretty cool little idea here. And then when you click on it, this is the main reason I wanted to do the tutorial. When you click on it, as you can see, it says 3 of 12. If I go to like this, what is this, the 7th one, go 7th of 12. And of course, if I go to the first one here and go back, it goes straight to the 12th one. And if we go forward, now of course you can download all kinds of jQuery that'll do this for you, but I wanted to show you how to do it yourself, because that way if you wanted to write any type of it'll work with anything, not just pictures. And if you wanted to kind of do it for just about anything, or like for example, if you wanted to add it to your mobile eyes or something like that, you can go ahead and do it. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do, obviously, is create our modal. And then the modal is going to have a few parts. The first part is going to be the actual image. And let's make a modal image. And we're going to have it do an alt of modal image. Okay, and we don't need a source. The source is going to actually come in from the jQuery. And then we're going to have our gallery. Okay, and then our gallery, just to make life a little easier, we're going to do image, let's see, image, and then we're going to do, let's see here, source. Let's give ourselves some space here. The source is going to be, we're going to go from, we're going to get our source from Unsplash. So source.unsplash.com, and we'll make them not too big, but let's go 600 by 600. Okay, and then let's make them all, let's see, let's make them all sports car. And yeah, and then we'll just make about, let's make about 10 of them just to keep it easy. Oh, let's give it an alt. So as you can see, I like to use Emmet. Emmet is one of the best things out there. So now we instantly have 10 pictures of something with sports car. Well, this one kind of came out with sports also, but we have sports and car. So let's go back here and let's change this, instead of sports car, to just car. And that should be good. Okay, so now we have car. So the only thing with using the Unsplash in this way is that every time we refresh, it's going to give me 10 new pictures. So that'll slow us down just a little bit, but it shouldn't be too bad since I only have 10 pictures. Okay, now in our modal, we're going to have a few things. We're going to have the back and forward button. So let's do that. Left arrow button. And the left arrow hex code is just ampersand and left arrow, like that. And then we'll do the same thing for the right arrow button. Okay, so now we have a left arrow and a right arrow, and then we're going to need the close button. So let's just make a div that says close. And we're going to use times for that so that it's a perfect X. Okay, and then after that, we're going to do our counter. And in our counter, we're just going to put something so that we can keep track of of what it's going to look like, the formatting that we're going to do in the CSS. So that's basically it. We have our modal and then the gallery that's going to come out in the modal. Okay, so now that our HTML is pretty much done, we're going to kind of close it like this so we can refer to all of the modal. Okay, so let's go ahead and get everything started on the CSS. So what we're going to do is, just to get the modal out of our way, we're going to do the modal, and let's just say display none for right now, just so we can work on the gallery, which is the easiest thing to work on. So okay, so first for the gallery, let's go display flex. Let's go flex wrap. Okay, and then justify content center, and then let's go to the gallery image, and then let's make it a height of 125 just to keep it easy. There you go. Let's give it a little bit of margin. That's perfect. And so now, in order to get that little this thing going here, this little idea here, what we're going to do is we're going to play with the filter. So we're going to say filter. We're going to say let's go grayscale. And let's do like 100% grayscale, which brings it to that. Then we're going to say transition 0.4 seconds, and then we'll say gallery image hover, and say filter grayscale 0. Okay, and let's change this to a pointer. Okay, and now we have little links here. Okay, so we can do grayscale, we can do blur, but when we do blur at a pixel. So 5 pixels, for example, gives us that type of blur. We can do 3 pixel blur, you know, and so when we hover, we can bring it back that way. So we could do the blur, we could do the grayscale. Let's just do the grayscale for now, because I kind of like that one a little bit better. It doesn't hurt your eyes as much. Okay, so that's pretty much done. Let's go ahead and work on the modal now. So before we work on the modal, let's go ahead and start our jQuery here. Okay, now we have jQuery ready. The first thing I want to do is get our modal all set up, just so we can have something to work with. So in order to do that, we're going to say that, and this is, again, this is why we love jQuery. jQuery uses the same calibration as CSS does in order to get your ID or your class. You know, it does the same. It uses the same terminology. So this is one of the reasons I love using jQuery. So we're going to go ahead and go all the way up here and say that our modal image, which is this right here, we're going to say that the attribute, which is the source, we want it to be the gallery image. The first one that comes up, I want it to be the attribute its source. Okay, so again, what we're saying is that in the modal image, which is the actual ID for the image in the modal, we want the attribute, the source attribute, and then when we put this comma here, it actually tells you what we want the source attribute to be. We want its attribute to be the image, the gallery from the image, just like here, the gallery image, the first image from the gallery, we want its attribute. So when we have source without the comma, it actually just shows you whatever its attribute is. So the attribute for the first, which is this, is going to be what this is. Okay? So that's one of the ways we're going to do this dynamically. So let's go ahead and show our modal. And here's our modal. Okay? Right now it's actually just it's display block or display normal, so it's pushing everything down, but we're going to change that quickly. So let's go ahead and play with the modal. So let's go ahead to the modal here, and we're going to say position fixed, so that no matter if you go up or down, and then we're going to say left 0, we're going to do a background. Now, well, before we do the background, let me show you something. If we do our Z index of 1000, it puts it in front. But did you know you can do RGBA using just these codes too? It actually works the same way. If we were to do 000000, we get the same black. We know this. Well, as we go up, we can do 00 again, and then it's completely clear. We can do all the way, let's say 55, and it's semi. We can do FF, and it's completely showing again. So since it's double, we can actually use just a single number here. Just like when the hex code is all repeated, you can just use one number, correct? So the visibility, the transparency, which is also a double digit, if it's going to be doubled, if it's going to be the same digit doubled, then you can use just one of the digits. So we're going to make it semi-permeable by saying A, for example, and so now it's semi-permeable or translucent. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and say that okay, that's basically it. The position fixed, left, right, okay, all that's correct. So now we're going to go ahead and say the modal image. Now, if you noticed over here, when I clicked on the modal image, I'm able to make it go smaller if I go up, no matter what size my my window is. And that's important because if I take my phone and put it on landscape, I want this to constrict its size also. Okay, so in order to do that, we do the regular stuff, which is position absolute, Z index 1001. And then we're going to do left 50%. Okay, and then we're going to translate X and Y, X first and Y. Okay, so now it's dead center. Now, right now for the responsiveness, because right now it's not responsive at all. For responsiveness, we're going to do max height is 95% and max width is 95%. So now we have this not getting any bigger. Now if we just did regular height and regular width like this, we don't get what we really want, because you see how it's kind of morphing. It's really not doing a good job. It's just morphing everything. So in order to have this set up the correct way, we do max on each way, and it just does it proportionately. Okay, so now we have all that set up. Next on our item is our left and right arrow. So let's go ahead and do that. So we can either say button, or we can just say left arrow and right arrow. And to keep it organized, let's just do it that way. So the left arrow and right arrow is going to be position absolute. We're going to do 1003, Z, 1003. We're going to say top is 50%. We're going to use that same emit here. Transform, translate X this time. I'm sorry, translate Y, because we're going up and down. So negative 50%. Okay, good. And so now it just looks like a regular old arrow. Let's make them bigger. A little bit too big. That looks okay, maybe 3.2, just to give it a nice round number. Okay, so now the next thing is just positioning them. Left 20, right 20. Okay, so now we have that. We also have to make them cursor pointer so we know that we can select them. Now, as you can see, depending on the picture, you may or may not be able to see the arrow. So what I want is that when the arrow is over a white background, that you can still see it, obviously, but that when it's over a black background, you can also see it with this outline. So in order to do that, all we're going to do is say that we're going to do a text shadow. Now our text shadow is going to be 1px, 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 and white. Okay, so as you can see, it's just over that one area. So to make it go around the entire area, instead of doing colon, we're going to do this. We're going to copy it 4 times. Okay, and then let's terminate it right here. So all we have to do is put negatives around everything. So -1, 1, 1, -1, and -1, -1. And now we have a pretty solid outline around our arrow. Okay? And that way when it's over something else like this, you can still see it. And if it's over the white, you can still see it. Okay? Or in this case, the transparent black. Very good. Okay? So now we're going to do the same thing to our X, to our close symbol here. So let's go ahead and do that. So the reason we don't add the close to all of this is because we don't want the top to be 50%. So we're going to actually copy all of this, but delete what we don't need. Okay, so see how it is right here. So we don't need that. So we're going to say top 20, left, sorry, right 20. And now it's right here. Okay, right in the corner where we want it. Very good. Now to give this a little bit more of a separation, let's just make our gallery image, sorry, our modal image. Where is our modal image? Ah, here it is. Have a border white solid. Okay, so now we have our modal. Now we need the counter to be the same exact thing. We're going to take this and copy it. Go to our counter. Let's put it bottom. And then let's put this left 50%. And then say translate X. And there we go. Okay, and actually we don't need this translate here either. Nice and clean. Okay, so there we have it. We don't need a cursor on the counter, so let's take the cursor off. And we can lower this font a little bit. And there we go. Now our modal is pretty much done. Now let's work on the functionality of the modal. Okay, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to display it. Eventually we're going to have it to where it displays when we click on a picture. So we're going to have to say display none right here. So let's go ahead and say display none. Okay, so now let's just do the first piece of functionality. So when we click on a modal image, no, when we click on a gallery image, we're going to run a function. It's a simple function. The function is that the modal fades in, and that modal image attribute source. Let's go copy all this in here. The modal image attribute source will equal this attribute source. Okay, so we're going to have it. We have the modal fade in. Then you're going to have the modal source. That's we don't need this anymore because we finished formatting, so we can push this down to here. So now the modal image attribute source will equal whatever we click on. So we're going to say this. Oops. I didn't mean to do that. I meant to do this. Okay. So now when we click on something like these trees, it comes up and it turns into that. Now let's go ahead and make this X work so that we can close it anytime we need to. So when we click close, when we click close, we fire another function, and that's the modal fades out. Okay, so now when we do, what is here, we have this guy right here. When we click the close button, that goes away, and we have our next one. Okay, very good. Okay, so now the next simplest thing to do, okay, we're going to do this in order of simple to difficult. The next simple thing to do is do our next and previous buttons, okay? So now we're going to say, let's put this in order. So now let's do the right arrow first, since that's our next arrow. So when we click our next arrow, okay, when we click our next arrow, now when we do that, now we have to do a little bit of extra programming. So the next thing we need to do is we need to say we're going to pick whatever this one is and go to the next one. So now in order to do that, we have to do some pre-formatting first. So let's think through this first, okay? So basically when we click this, we're telling the program to pull up this program. We're telling the system to pull up this picture here, okay? And so when we pick this picture, which is picking the wrong picture, I don't know why, but when we pick this picture, we want the counter to be this picture. We want its ID to be recognized, so that when we click the next arrow, we iterate up once and get the next ID and bring that information up. Okay, so how do we do that? Let's think about that. We want, let's just put it right here so we see what we want. First, we want to choose, choose current image location by ID. So what does that mean? Well, we want the image's location to be its ID. Then we want, when we click next, we iterate. Increment. So when next button is clicked, we increment by ID. So that every time we click on the next button, we increment the ID number, and since the location is tied to that ID, then we can basically increment. Okay, so so that's when the next button is clicked, and obviously the reverse is going to happen when the previous button is clicked, where we decrement location by ID. And obviously the last thing we want to do is, if ID is above total, reset. So that means that if we go to number 10 of 10, then we're going to reset and go back to 1. Okay, so let's go ahead and write that out. So now that we've gotten it written out, we can actually program it. So the first thing we need to do is create some variables. So the first variable is our iterator or incrementer. So that's going to be I. We're going to make it equal to 0. Okay, our next one is going to be the length, and that's going to be the length of the gallery. So that's going to be gallery image. Okay, and that's going to be the gallery image length. Okay, so now that we have the gallery image length, let's verify everything. So I like to check everything all the time. So let's just make our console log. Let's make it print out the length. And here we have 10 exactly. Okay, so now that we know that this is correct, now we have to go through each of our IDs. Now, a pretty cool way to do that is, we don't need this anymore. We've already done our check. The pretty cool way to do that now is we're going to create IDs of each one of these pictures. We're going to give each one of these pictures its own ID based on its number, where it is. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go to the gallery, to each image, and we're going to fire off a function. and we're going to say that we're going to iterate. Now, once we iterate the very first time, since I is already 0, it's going to immediately add 1 to it. So our first number is already going to be 1. And so then we're going to say that we're going to say this, because now we're referring to the gallery image. So this will refer to the function's heading right here. So we're going to say that this attribute, now instead of the source, we're going to go into the ID, will equal, what is it going to equal? It's going to equal index it's going to equal, so what is it going to equal? It's going to equal image, the word image, because we can't start an ID with a number. So we're going to start it with image and then plus I. So what we've done is when we go to the console, we can say, for example, we're going to do gallery. Let's do image 1. So to check this, let's go ahead and just find out what gallery image. Let's first say console log. Let's go to the gallery image first attribute ID. And you can see that it's image 1. Let's go to the fourth one, or the fifth one, image 5. So you can see that we already have images on each one of these. Okay? So now we're going to use that to iterate our pictures. Okay? So now instead, let's start from the very beginning. So now we have here that when we click the first image, we're going to say that the modal fade in is image source of this attribute source. Okay? But we're not going to do that. We're going to say, instead of this, we're going to first say that I will equal now equal this, the index. Now if we do that and then we say console I, this is what we'll get. So when we click the console, let's go to the console, we click it, we see that the first one is actually 0. And then this is 1. So we actually have to say index plus 1. So now when we click it, it says 1, this one says 10, and now this one says 3. It's the first, second, third, and fourth, etc., etc. So now we know that I is being changed as we click. Okay, so now everything else should be a little easier. So now the modal image attribute source, excuse me, will equal this. We could keep this the same, that's fine. But when we go to the next, so now when we click next, function, let's terminate this function. So now when we click next, now we could say I plus plus, and then we could say copy. We can say that the modal is, instead of this attribute, we can say instead of this, we can say it's the image plus I attribute source. Okay, so now when we click this first one and go to the next one, so now we copy this over to here, and so we say I plus plus, and now the modal attribute source, instead of being this attribute source, it's going to be, we're going to go to the image ID that has image whatever number that is. So now when we go to this first one and click to the next one, we have the next one. Now, what about this 1 of 10? Well, that's kind of easy. What we're going to do is we're going to say I, right? So now we're going to say that the the counter, the HTML, will equal I of length. So when we click that, forgot of is in quotes, and we're going to concatenate because I was kind of going ahead of myself here. So now when we click on it, we have 1 of 10. We click on this one, we have 4 of 10, and when we click on this one, we have 10 of 10. So that's working correctly. So when we copy everything over, let's copy everything over. So now this stays the same. So now when we click the right arrow, it's going to increment the I. Whatever I we had here is the new I. So this, when we click on our image, we have the new I is whatever this index is, plus 1. Then we're going to take that same I, and when we click the right arrow, which won't even appear until the modal appears, and then that's going to say, that's going to increment by 1, and then our new I is going to create what image is going to be the source of the modal image. And then the counter will also increment. And let's try that out. So here's, let's see, this is 5, 6, 7, and then 8, 9, 10, etc. Okay? So now, the next thing we want to do is that when we click 10, we want to be able to stop at 10 and start all over again. So to do that, we're just going to create a simple if statement. So if, and this will happen. Okay? So if I is greater than the length, then I equals 1. And then we repeat this stuff. Okay, so now we should be able to go from 9 to 10, back to 1, back to 2, and it just repeats. Okay, so now when we do the right arrow, now, well, there's one thing that is missing. When we do now, there is one thing that is missing. When we do the next one, it fades out and then fades in. So that's a nice little transition that I like. So in order to do that, you might think that it's that you just press here. Let's see here. When we do this, we just say fade out, you know, modal image fade out, and then do all of this and then fade in again. So let's try and see if that happens. So let's wait for everything to load up. Here we go. Nope, you see, it clicks, then fades. So in order to get around that, we're actually going to use a callback on fade out. So we're going to do fade out, then fade in, like that. So, because we still want the modal image to fade out, then fade in. But now we're going to do a function inside. And inside of all that, then we'll put all of this code. Now it's working the way it should work. So now we have our modal working the way it needs to do. We chose the current image by ID. Then we click the next button. It increments by ID. And if the ID is above the total, we reset, which is true. Okay, so now we just have to do the reverse for left arrow, which is really simple. All we do is we highlight all of this. We say copy and paste. Now we change this to left arrow. We're going to decrement. And then all of this stays the same. All of this stays the same. All of this stays the same. Now we say if our I is less than 1, I is the length, and all this stays the same. So now if we go backwards, oh, this is already black and white. That's funny. If we go backwards, it does what it's supposed to do, and it goes back to 10. So let's see what happens if we scale this. So if we scale, if we add a lot more pictures, it should stay the same. So let's go ahead and do image source equals, and let's do all of this. And let's do 600 by 600. All right, actually, let's try some different sizes. Let's try 300 by 450. Okay, and then let's do truck for those. And let's do an alt. And let's do 15. Oh, what did I do wrong? Let's see, truck. source.unsplash.com. Oh, we need a source here because I'm an idiot sometimes. Okay. So now we have a whole bunch of extra pictures here. Notice that these are taller. Let's go to 9. Notice that our number updated. We added 15. So now our number automatically updated to 25. If we go to 10, notice that our picture is scalable. You see that? Let's go to the last one here, or the second to last one. And everything works perfectly. Okay? And of course, if we do our console this way, works well too. Now let's do some long ones. Let's try image source equals HTTP. This time, put the whole thing in. Source.unsplash.com. Let's do some longer ones. So let's say we had some high quality ones, 1280 by 720. And this is of a girl. And let's increment that and say alt equals girl. And we do times 30. And now our gallery is getting kind of big here. I don't know why these repeated, but let's see. Oh, that should be fine. I don't know why they repeated, but for whatever reason. Let's refresh this. And now we don't have any repeats. Very good. So now everything scaled up. Let's see how many pictures we have total. 55. And as you can see, even though it's longer, it won't get any taller than our size here. Okay? And notice that this works really well because we have this outline. And so when we go to the next one, works out perfectly. If we go to the last one, there we go. So thank you very much for spending time with me and creating this wonderful gallery. If you have any questions, please let me know. Have a wonderful day.